Close your eyes. Now think about this. Right now, at this very moment, there are cats on 6 of the 7 continents. Not wildcats that evolved there. House cats, the same animal, the same soft, self-contained, quietly confident creature, living in apartments in Tokyo, in barns in Iowa, in alleyways in Istanbul, in fishing villages on the coast of Norway, in suburbs of Sydney, in favelas in Sao Paulo. 600 million of them, on every continent except Antarctica, and no one invited them. That is the part that should keep you up at night, except we are trying to help you sleep, so let it settle gently instead. No government program distributed cats around the world, no breeding initiative, no grand plan. Cats simply went. They found their way onto every landmass with human civilization on it, and they did it so quietly, so gradually, so completely, that by the time anyone thought to count them, they were already everywhere. This is the story of how that happened, the quietest invasion in natural history, and there is something fitting about telling it now, in the dark, while you are trying to sleep. Because cats are creatures of the dark. They are built for it. Their eyes are designed for twilight, for the hours between dusk and dawn when the rest of the world goes quiet. If a cat could choose the time to tell its own story, it would choose now. Last time, we explored the 4-billion-year journey of dogs, how wolves crept toward a campfire and chose to stay, how 2 species on either side of the firelight built something neither could have built alone. Dogs chose us, we said, or we chose them, or maybe they met us somewhere in the middle. Tonight, the story is different, because cats did not meet us in the middle. Cats walked in on their own terms, looked around, and decided we were useful. The relationship was never a partnership of equals, working toward a common goal. It was something stranger, something more like a negotiation that neither side fully understood, and that the cat, if we are being honest, probably won. There is no rush. Let your breathing slow. This story has been 10,000 years in the making. A few more minutes will not matter. To understand where cats came from, we need to go back much further than Egypt, much further than any civilization. We need to go back about 60 million years, to a world still recovering from the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. In that world, a group of small, tree-dwelling mammals called the miacids were quietly becoming the ancestors of every carnivore that would ever live. You may remember the miacids from our story about dogs. They were the same starting point. The same humble, weasel-sized creatures that gave rise to wolves, bears, seals, hyenas, and raccoons. And cats. This is one of those facts that seems impossible until you sit with it. Every dog that has ever fetched a ball, and every cat that has ever knocked a glass off a counter, share a common ancestor. A nervous little tree climber from 60 million years ago that would not have impressed anyone. The family tree split roughly 55 million years ago. One branch became the caniforms, the dog-like carnivores. The other became the feliforms, the cat-like carnivores. And from the feliform side, over millions of years, came something remarkable. Around 25 million years ago, in the forests of what is now Europe, an animal called Proailurus appeared. It was about the size of a large house cat, maybe 20 pounds. It had retractable claws, a flexible spine, forward-facing eyes with excellent depth perception, and teeth designed for shearing meat. If you saw one today, you would recognize it immediately, not as a specific cat, but as unmistakably, fundamentally cat. Proailurus is considered the first true cat, the ancestor of every feline that would follow. Lions, tigers, leopards, cheetahs, and the small, unremarkable tabby that might at this very moment be sleeping at the foot of your bed. 25 million years. That is how long cats have been cats. They found a design that worked, and they have been refining it ever since. But before the small cats could quietly take over the world, the large cats had their turn. The saber-toothed cats. You know the silhouette. Those enormous curved canine teeth, sometimes 8 inches long, jutting down from the upper jaw like twin daggers. Smilodon is the most famous, but there were many species spread across multiple continents, ruling the top of the food chain for millions of years. Smilodon fatalis roamed North America as recently as 11,000 years ago. It weighed up to 600 pounds. It could open its jaw to 120 degrees, nearly twice as wide as a modern lion. It hunted bison, horses, young mammoths. It was, by any reasonable standard, terrifying. And yet the saber-tooths are gone. The last of them vanished at the end of the Pleistocene, along with the mammoths and the giant ground sloths and so much else that made the Ice Age world extraordinary. The age of the giant cats ended, but the small cats survived, the ones that hunted mice instead of mammoths, the ones that did not need enormous prey to sustain enormous bodies, the ones that were adaptable and patient and quiet. In evolution, it is not always the strongest that endure. Sometimes it is the most flexible. Sometimes it is the ones who need the least. Among those small survivors was a species called Felis sylvestris, the wildcat. It still exists today in scattered populations across Europe, Asia, and Africa. It looks almost exactly like a domestic tabby, a little larger, a little wilder in the eyes, but close enough that you could mistake one for the other at a glance. The African subspecies, Felis sylvestris libica, is the one that matters for our story. Because this is the cat, the specific animal from which every single domestic cat on Earth descends. Not the European wildcat, not the Asian steppe cat, the African wildcat, living in the scrublands and grasslands of the Near East and North Africa. Genetic studies have confirmed this with striking precision. Every domestic cat, from a Persian in a Manhattan apartment to a stray in a Bangkok market, carries DNA that traces back to Felis sylvestris libica. One subspecies, one starting point. 600 million descendants. Now here is the question that makes the cat story so different from the dog story. Dogs were domesticated. Humans chose them, bred them, shaped them deliberately over thousands of years. Wolves became dogs because humans made it happen. Cats were not domesticated in the same way. Cats, as far as the evidence suggests, domesticated themselves. About 10,000 years ago, in the Fertile Crescent, the region that is now Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and parts of Turkey, humans did something that changed the world. They began to farm. For the first time, instead of following food wherever it wandered, people stayed in one place and grew it. This meant grain, and grain meant storage. Large quantities of wheat and barley piled in granaries concentrated in one location. And grain storage meant mice, enormous populations of mice drawn to the greatest free meal in the history of rodents. Imagine you are a small African wildcat living at the edge of one of these early farming settlements. You are a solitary hunter. You eat rodents. It is what you do. And suddenly, right there within easy walking distance, is the largest concentration of rodents you have ever encountered. A granary is, from a wildcat's perspective, an all-you-can-eat buffet that never closes. The cats came, not because humans called them, because the mice did. And here is a detail that makes this even more remarkable. In 2004, archaeologists on the island of Cyprus discovered a grave that was 9,500 years old. Inside it, a human had been buried alongside a cat. Not a wildcat that had wandered in. A cat that had been placed there deliberately, its body oriented in the same direction as the human, just 16 inches away. Cyprus has no native wildcats. That cat had been brought to the island by boat. Someone, nearly 10,000 years ago, cared enough about a cat to carry it across the sea. And when one of them died, they were buried together. This is the oldest known evidence of a close relationship between humans and cats, older than any Egyptian temple, older than any civilization we can name. A human and a cat side by side in the ground on a small island in the Mediterranean in a story that no one alive remembers. And the humans noticed. Of course they noticed. The cats were killing the mice that were eating their grain. This was useful, enormously, practically immediately useful. The farmers did not need to train the cats or direct them or teach them anything. The cats were already doing exactly what the farmers needed, simply by doing what cats had always done. So the humans tolerated them, then welcomed them, then over centuries began to feed them, shelter them, and value them. But here is the crucial difference from dogs. Dogs changed. Dogs became smaller, softer, more submissive. Their skulls shortened, their teeth shrank, their ears flopped. They underwent the full physical transformation of domestication. Cats barely changed at all. The skeleton of a modern house cat is almost identical to that of Felis sylvestris libica. Their teeth are the same, their claws are the same, their hunting instincts are fully intact. A house cat released into the wild can fend for itself almost immediately, something most dog breeds could never do. Cats negotiated a deal with humanity. We provide shelter and food, they provide pest control, and eventually companionship. But they never surrendered their independence. They never fully became ours. It was in Egypt that the relationship deepened into something extraordinary. By around 4,000 years ago, cats had become central to Egyptian life. They started as working animals in the grain stores, the same practical role they had played in the Fertile Crescent. But the Egyptians, more than any other ancient culture, fell in love with them. Cats were associated with the goddess Bastet, originally depicted as a fierce lioness and later as a graceful domestic cat. Temples were built in her honor. Festivals drew hundreds of thousands of worshippers. Cats lived in temples, were fed choice fish, and were treated with a reverence that bordered on worship. When a household cat died, the family shaved their eyebrows in mourning. Cats were mummified with the same care given to human dead. Archaeologists have found entire cemeteries of mummified cats, hundreds of thousands of them, wrapped in linen and decorated with painted faces. Killing a cat, even accidentally, was punishable by death. There are accounts of Roman soldiers being attacked by Egyptian mobs for harming a cat. The historian Diodorus Siculus recorded that an entire diplomatic incident erupted when a Roman visitor killed a cat in Alexandria. The crowd assembled. The man was dragged from his house. No official intervention could save him. Egypt loved its cats with a ferocity that the modern internet would understand perfectly. But Egypt also tried to keep its cats. For centuries, the export of cats from Egypt was forbidden by law. The Egyptians understood that their cats were valuable, and they did not want that value leaving the country. It did not work. Cats are not the kind of animal that respects borders. Phoenician traders, those great seafarers of the ancient Mediterranean, are believed to have smuggled cats out of Egypt on their ships. The Romans, as their empire expanded, brought cats with them across Europe. Not out of devotion, though some Romans certainly loved their cats. Out of practicality. Ships had rats. Cats killed rats. The math was simple. And this is how cats began to conquer the world, one ship at a time. Picture a Roman merchant vessel somewhere in the Mediterranean, maybe 2,000 years ago. Below deck, in the darkness near the cargo, a cat moves silently between the crates. It is doing what it has always done, hunting. The sailors do not worship it. They probably do not even particularly like it. But they know that a ship without a cat is a ship where the rats eat the rope and the grain and eventually the ship itself. The cat does not know it is traveling. It does not know that when the ship docks in Gaul or Britannia or Hispania, it will step off into a new continent and never return to Africa. It does not know that its descendants will spread across an empire. It just knows there are rats in the hold. And that is enough. The Vikings took cats too. The Norse goddess Freya rode a chariot pulled by 2 large cats. Viking longboats carried cats as mousers on their voyages across the North Atlantic. When the Vikings reached Iceland, cats came with them. When they reached Greenland, cats came. There is archaeological evidence of cats at Lansaw Meadows in Newfoundland, the Viking settlement in North America 1,000 years ago. Cats reached the New World before Columbus. They just did not bother to announce it. The tradition of ship cats persisted well into the modern era. The British Royal Navy kept cats on its vessels through both world wars. One cat, a black and white tuxedo named Unsinkable Sam, is said to have survived the sinking of 3 different warships during World War II. His real name was Oscar, and whether the story is entirely true or partly legend, it speaks to something real about how sailors felt about their cats. In the loneliness and danger of the open sea, a cat was warmth. A cat was normalcy. A small, self-sufficient creature that did not care about torpedoes or storms, that simply found the warmest spot on the ship and slept. But the story of cats is not all worship and warm ships. There is a dark chapter, and it lasted centuries. In medieval Europe, cats became associated with witchcraft, heresy, and the devil. Pope Gregory IX, in a papal decree of 1233, described black cats as instruments of Satan. This was not a fringe belief. It was institutional. Cats were killed in enormous numbers across Europe, burned, drowned, thrown from buildings during festivals. Entire populations were wiped out in some regions. The irony is staggering. At the very time Europeans were killing cats by the thousands, the rat population was exploding, and the rats carried fleas, and the fleas carried Yersinia pestis, the Black Death. It is too simple to say that killing cats caused the plague. The plague had many factors, many vectors, many causes rooted in trade routes and population density and the biology of the bacterium itself. But it is not unreasonable to note that systematically destroying the one animal most effective at controlling the rat population was not, in retrospect, a wise decision. Cats survived the medieval period, of course. They always survive. But it took centuries for European attitudes to shift back toward tolerance and, eventually, affection. The age of exploration, beginning in the 15th and 16th centuries, sent cats to every remaining corner of the world. Spanish and Portuguese ships carried cats to the Americas, where they became barn cats, ship cats, and eventually house cats. The cats that live in North and South America today are largely descended from European ship cats, themselves descended from Roman cats, themselves descended from Egyptian cats, themselves descended from African wildcats drawn to grain stores 10,000 years ago. That is a lineage. That is a thread stretching across 10 millennia and 6 continents, unbroken. In Asia, cats had their own independent histories, sometimes intersecting with the Western thread, sometimes running parallel. In Japan, cats arrived from China around the 6th century. likely as gifts between Buddhist monks who used them to protect sacred manuscripts from mice. By the 17th century, cats were so valued in Japan that a law required all cats in Kyoto to be set free to deal with a mouse infestation threatening the silk industry. The Maneki Neko, the beckoning cat figurine you see in shop windows, has its origins in Japanese folklore from this period. A cat that brings luck, a cat that invites fortune in. In Thailand, the cats known to the West as Siamese were kept exclusively by royalty. They lived in the palace. They were believed to receive the souls of the departed. A Siamese cat was present at the coronation of the king, honored and observed like a member of the court. In the Islamic world, cats were treated with consistent kindness. The Prophet Muhammad, according to tradition, was fond of cats. One famous story tells of him cutting the sleeve of his robe rather than disturb a cat that had fallen asleep on it. This cultural warmth toward cats persists across the Muslim world. In Istanbul, the cat population is fed and sheltered by the city itself, a communal act of care that continues to this day. When the British colonists reached Australia in 1788, cats came with them on the first fleet. Within decades, cats had gone feral in the Australian bush. And here the story takes a complicated turn, because Australia had no native cat-like predators. Its small mammals, its birds, its reptiles had evolved for millions of years without anything like a cat to contend with. They had no defenses, no instincts for avoiding this kind of hunter. Feral cats in Australia became apex predators almost overnight, in evolutionary terms. Today, an estimated 2 to 6 million feral cats roam the Australian continent. They are implicated in the decline of dozens of native species and the extinction of at least 27 mammal species since European settlement. It is a reminder that the same qualities that make cats extraordinary survivors, their independence, their hunting instincts, their adaptability, can also make them devastating when introduced to ecosystems that never evolved alongside them. The cat does not know it is causing harm. It is simply being a cat. But being a cat in the wrong place can reshape an entire continent. What makes a cat such a perfect survivor? It is worth pausing here as you settle deeper into whatever comfortable place you are listening from, to consider what 65 million years of refinement have produced. Cats are obligate carnivores. They must eat meat. They cannot survive on plants. This sounds like a limitation, but it is actually a form of specialization so precise that it borders on elegance. Every part of the cat is built for hunting. The retractable claws, kept sharp inside their sheaths until the exact moment they are needed. The flexible spine that allows a cat to twist its body in midair and land on its feet from almost any height. The eyes, with pupils that can expand to cover nearly the entire visible surface of the eye, gathering light in conditions where you would see nothing at all. A cat can see in light levels 6 times lower than what a human needs. Its whiskers can detect changes in air current, telling it about objects it cannot see. Its hearing extends into the ultrasonic range, picking up the high-pitched sounds of rodent communication that are completely inaudible to us. And then there is the patience. A cat will sit motionless for an hour, watching a single spot, waiting for a mouse to emerge. Not because it was trained to, because it is built to. That patience is not learned behavior. It is instinct, refined over millions of years, encoded in every fiber. And then there is the purr. No one fully understands the purr. We know the mechanics. Cats vibrate the muscles of their larynx at a frequency between 25 and 50 hertz, producing that low, continuous rumble that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at the same time. But the purpose of the purr remains one of the small mysteries of biology. Cats purr when they are content, but they also purr when they are injured, when they are frightened, when they are dying. The frequency of a cat's purr falls within a range that has been shown to promote bone density and tissue healing. Some researchers believe the purr evolved as a kind of self-repair mechanism, a way for a solitary animal that spends much of its life resting between hunts to keep its body strong during long periods of inactivity. If this is true, and the evidence is suggestive though not conclusive, then the purr is not just a sound of comfort. It is medicine, a healing vibration that the cat carries inside itself, available at any time, in any circumstance, without needing anyone else at all. That feels like the most cat thing imaginable. Even their method of healing is independent. There are roughly 600 million domestic cats on Earth today. Some estimates put the number higher. They live in at least every country that has been surveyed. They are the most popular pet in the world, having overtaken dogs in total numbers, though not in total households, since cats are more likely to live in multi-cat homes. They have become improbably one of the defining cultural symbols of the internet age. More photographs of cats exist than photographs of any other animal. More videos, more memes, more shared moments of delight at a cat doing something absurd or elegant or inexplicable. And yet, for all their presence in our lives, for all the billions of photographs, cats remain fundamentally mysterious. They do not come when called, usually. They do not perform tricks for approval. They do not gaze into your eyes with the desperate oxytocin-triggering devotion of a dog. What they do is choose. A cat that sits on your lap is choosing to be there. A cat that presses its head against your hand is offering something freely, not performing submission. The affection of a cat, when it comes, feels earned in a way that dog affection, beautiful as it is, does not. This is perhaps why cats fascinate us. They are the only domestic animal that behaves as if domestication was their idea. Here is what I find most remarkable about the whole story. Cats conquered 6 continents without ever trying to conquer anything. They did not spread because they were forced to. They spread because wherever humans went, humans created the conditions that cats thrive in. Stored grain attracted mice, ships had rats, farms had barns, cities had alleys, and in every one of those niches, a small, self-sufficient, lethally efficient predator found exactly what it needed. The cats did not adapt to us. We adapted the world to them without meaning to. They walked through our civilizations like water flowing downhill, finding every crack, filling every gap, taking what was offered without ever asking and without ever saying thank you. And we, for reasons that are difficult to articulate but easy to feel, love them for it. Think about the journey. A wildcat in the scrublands of North Africa, 10,000 years ago, following the scent of mice to a grain store at the edge of a farming village. That same genetic line carried on ships across the Mediterranean, worshipped in Egypt, persecuted in medieval Europe, honored in Japanese temples, released into the Australian bush, photographed 1 billion times, and shared across a network that would have been inconceivable to the farmers who first tolerated a cat in their granary. From one subspecies, from one quiet decision to follow the mice. 600 million cats, 6 continents, 10,000 years. If there is a cat near you tonight, you might notice how still it is, how self-contained, how it seems to carry within itself a perfect, quiet world that does not need your approval or your attention or your understanding. That stillness is ancient. It comes from Proilurus, 25 million years ago, from the saber-tooths that hunted mammoths while this small cousin hunted mice, from the African wildcat that walked into a granary and decided to stay, from temple cats in Egypt and ship cats on the Mediterranean and barn cats in colonial America and alley cats in every city on Earth. That cat, wherever it is the endpoint of the most successful quiet invasion in the history of life on this planet. Dogs chose us around a campfire. It was mutual. It was warm. It was a love story. Cats chose proximity. They chose the mice, and the mice happened to be near us, and so the cats were near us too. And over 10,000 years, something unexpected grew out of that proximity. Not the desperate, loyal, tail-wagging love of a dog, something cooler, something that asks less and in its own way means just as much. A cat does not need you. That's the whole point. When it stays anyway, when it curls against your side and closes its eyes and purrs with that low, steady rumble that seems to come from somewhere deeper than its throat, that is not dependence, that is preference. And preference, freely given, is its own kind of devotion. Let that be what carries you into sleep tonight. The sound of a purr, real or remembered. The weight of an animal that crossed 10,000 years and 6 continents to end up exactly where it is. Not because it had to, because it chose to. The most successful invasion in natural history was not fought with armies or ships or grand strategies. It was fought with patience, with silence, with retractable claws and eyes that see in the dark. The cats won. They won a long time ago, and they did it without anyone noticing. And somewhere nearby, or somewhere in your memory, a cat is sleeping. Cats sleep an average of 15 hours a day. They are, without question, the greatest sleepers in the animal kingdom. They have elevated rest to an art form. They sleep on windowsills, on keyboards, on the edges of staircases, in boxes that are clearly too small, in sunbeams that move across the floor as the day turns. They sleep without apology, without guilt, without the nagging human sense that they should be doing something more productive. They simply close their eyes and let the world carry on without them for a while. There might be something to learn from that. Close your eyes now. Rest. The story is done. Good night.